you doing?
Oh, good. Good. Yeah, no, it's, and you know, these guys here wax lyrical about you.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, like really, like you've got to the point when they start talking about you, it's like this legend status.
That's what I'm talking about. This is why I come here.
Really? Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah. Because like you say, you don't know much about me. I don't know much about you. I've built this figure in my mind as to who you are, and it's this kind of globe-trotting, legal guy with instead of a sword, you've got like a pen, and you're just like slaying everyone.
You know what? I have good people.
Yeah.
Really, that's really what it is.
Yeah.
So somehow, thank God, I know how, thank God, but I've built up relationships with some real legends, like some real, top of the food chain lawyers, and
The Harvey Specters of the world.
yeah. Because I don't fight my own battles, I just have
but you need a team, right?
I just have a door marked wolves. When things go wrong, I just open the door and go, I tried to be nice. I tried to be nice. You don't want to be nice. And that really is how it goes. So we had this thing, right? And it was just...
That's a nice weapon to have.
Dude, it's awesome. It's awesome. Because I had this thing when I started. And it was just, to be honest, it played off the fact that I just wanted to do good deals, right? I just wanted to have conversations that made sense. I just wanted... you're a grown man, I'm a grown man. Why can't we just talk to each other like men and figure this thing out?
Yeah.
I had that kind of mindset when it came to negotiating about business. And I had this thing in my head, and it was just mainly just a cool thing to say, but it came off the back of a real intent. And I just wanted to be known as an absolute pleasure. Like this law firm, these guys, they're an absolute pleasure to negotiate with, but they are catastrophic to fight.
Right.
And I like the way that sounded, and the fact that it's kind of playing out like that's making me real happy, because like our litigation team, they're not just good at what they do, they're literally the best in the world. They like our guys are not just ex Magic Circle, they're ex International Magic Circle.
Magic Circle, what's that?
Magic Circle is just the crew of law firms which are renowned for being the best.
Oh, really? Is that's the kind of...
Yeah.
It's like the big four accounting firm.
Right.
There's a Magic Circle.
So there's a Magic Circle. So there's a crew of Magic Circle law firms. Well, our guys from ex-International Magic Circle, as in the best of the best.
Really?
And the fun thing is that other lawyers respond to it. So we don't actually get into protracted fights, because once I open the door, I close it pretty quickly, right? Because these guys come out, they say what they have to say, and other lawyers respond to it. They back down, they go, okay, fine. Because this is like...
Because they know
Because it's professor talking to students, right? When you're equally armed, right, you can have a fight. When you're completely outgunned, and when we're talking about outgunned, it's the point you made about the pen. These guys they're mountains. When you're standing in front of a mountain, the mountain is explaining to you how the law works in this particular circumstance.
The mountain doesn't need to move. You don't need to climb the mountain to understand what the mountain's
nobody
about.
argues back with the mountain.
No.
Right? Unless you're a real fool. You just don't argue back when the mountain's talking to you. And that's kind of what it's like, I'm really grateful for it.
I guess then that's where the whistleblowers, remember that movie with Russell Crowe?
Inside Man. I didn't watch it.
It was about the tobacco. He was a whistleblower for tobacco. He was a scientist for British America, whoever it was. And he was like, all of the CEOs of the big tobacco companies went in front of Congress and they said, our products don't kill people. All of them said it. And he's just like, I'm a scientist for you guys, and I know that you are. Like, I know that these things do. And he was a whistleblower. And it changed the course of tobacco history, because he was a whistleblower. But he did that in the face of those litigation teams and those tobacco companies, because they know the deal. They knew what they were doing. But they put so many legal representatives in there. His name was Jeffrey Wigand. And Russell Crowe played him in the movie. It's quite disturbing, because how much resource do these tobacco companies have? And for him to go, that's my mountain, and I'm going to whistle, but I'm going to climb that mountain. And he won. Like, I mean, they're kind of outliers, they're anomaly, but there's probably a lot of people like that. But most people look at that mountain and go, I'm not going to climb that.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That's your mountain.
Yeah. These guys they're a different level. They're a different level. And it's great. It's nice to have that, you know. We're creative when it comes to...
You guys can be on my team if I ever get in any trouble.
Yeah, for sure. yeah, but I do corporate law, me personally. So I build things. I help people start, build, restructure their businesses, their empires, you know, buy, and then whatever the exit strategy is. So if you want to sell it, merge it, whatever, you want to buy somebody else out, we do all those sorts of things. That's what I do. But when things go wrong, I'm not, even if I would be good at it, which, you know, maybe I would, but it doesn't suit my nature very well to fight, to argue, because like on my own account, as I was saying to the guys upstairs, on my own account, I let a lot go. You know, I don't really.
You're a lover.
Yeah, well, I don't complain too much. I'm not really about to get into an argument over X, Y, or Z. I'm just, no, not for me. When somebody's behind me saying, I need you to help me, then I'm like, all right, let's do this then. Yeah. You know, then it's a different machine. Yeah. Maybe all the resentment of taking all of that stuff on my own account.
It's like a different why, isn't it?
Yeah, but the problem is that then you're like, well, when do I sleep? How much law is enough law to know? How much procedural rules do I need to know? How much is enough? When do I go back to bed? Because I've got this case on Thursday. When do I go to sleep? Well, how about never? Because I'm never going to know enough. How do I know how much that guy knows? I need to know. I need to make sure I know more than that guy knows. And I'm not going to sleep. I'm not going to, either I don't take it personally and I let some stuff go and I do a mediocre job, or I take it absolutely personally and become obsessed by it. Well, neither of those two things are good for me.
Which is the difference between being an idealistic person and a person who's there for function.
Right. So I'm not about to be a box ticker, but I also don't want to be a litigator. No. Which is why I have these sawn-off shotgun litigators. You know, we'll have these guys and girls that can do this sort of thing and they enjoy it.
But you need the team. Everyone needs a team, right?
Absolutely.
You need your hand. You need your hatchet men.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, when I grew up in Australia, and I went to a school called St. Paul's, and did Mandarin for 5 years as a language, and I did it. I learnt Mandarin because I wanted to be a Chinese-speaking lawyer in high school, because I thought this was 88 to 93 when I was in high school, and because we had a lot of foreign exchange students from China come over at our school, and I was like, China is the future. And I think I need to be a lawyer that speaks Chinese as well to kind of make it in the world.
That's interesting.
I did work experience at a law firm in Brisbane, and the first 3 days, the lady who I was under her wing pulled out these books that were a foot thick on tort law. I was like, she goes, do you know about tort law? And I was like, I've never even heard the word tort before. And it really kind of scared me off the whole profession, because I was like, wow, I don't think I'm cut out for this.
Yeah, that's a real shame. That's a real shame because, like, as a subject, like, forget the different areas, right? Just as a subject in and of itself, like, law is fascinating. And it's like when you think about the minds that are writing those books, because it's not me writing that book. You know, you're talking about judges and, you know, senior judges, Supreme Court, you know, Court of Appeal judges that are writing these reports and these case judgments and this, that, and the other. You know, again, we're talking about this whole mountain analogy, but you're sitting at the feet of mountains, and they are telling you their thoughts, like.
Or you're standing on the shoulders of giants.
Well, exactly,
sort of thing.
Exactly. So I'll give you an example. Like, Court of Appeal has 5 judges, right? The reason for having 5 or an odd number is that you can never have a hung decision. So there'll always be a majority decision, right? So say, for example, is a telephone call, does that constitute an aggressive telephone call? Does that constitute assault, right? That particular case went to the House.
Really?
So that particular case, there was a particular case about whether a threatening telephone call or stalking, it was Aaron Island, Aaron Burstow. These two cases went to the Court of Appeal for decision.
Oh.
Could somebody making an aggressive telephone call, threatening telephone call, constitute assault? Assault is the anticipation of immediate harm, right? So if I physically touch you, okay, that's one thing. But if I go to touch you, right, I'm standing right in front of you and I go to hit you, even if I don't touch you, the fact that you've anticipated immediate harm means that's an assault, right? I'm invading you in a way that is illegal. Anyway, the question for the judges was, can a telephone call ever be that? Because where's the immediacy, right? Anyway, point is this. So you have these judges, 5 of them sitting there. 3 of them say, yes, it's assault. 2 of them say no, right? So if you just want to, the answer to the question is yes, it's assault. And you can go about your day. These 2 people said no. These 2 people are mountains. Why don't we read what they had to say? Right? And if you read what they wrote, you will be utterly convinced. Well, I was. I was
that it's not assault.
It's not assault. A great thing to do just to play in this legal sphere, read the dissenting opinion, the opinion that failed. Read that first, because that's a mountain talking to you. No part of my brain found space. I read it and I was like, I'm utterly convinced it could not be assault. And then you read the leading opinion,
right,
which actually won. You read the leading opinion, and you're like, okay. And it was Lord Stein, I believe, wrote the judgment, the leading judgment, and it's a work of art. Just to read it,
it blends both the opposite points of view together to then create a result, or
so the idea is like the legislation says this, and then you're like, well, but this is this, and that is that, and this is this, and that is that, and so the dissenting opinion, the opinion that fails, says, look, there is no immediacy, this, that, and the other, so therefore it can never be, because it was never immediate. It may be something else, but it's not assault, right? And you're like, okay, that sounds right. Yeah, that's fine, right? But you're talking about a good few pages saying essentially that, and then you've got the leading opinion that says, again, beautifully written, well worth reading, just because it's so beautifully written, but essentially saying the person that made the telephone call, his intent was to terrify the person. His intent was to make the person feel like they would be harmed immediately. Whether it was possible or not is a separate issue. The intent was immediate harm. They want that person to feel that fear. And it's so understood. That's the point.
It's so understood by the victim.
By the victim.
Right.
You wanted that to happen, and the victim, as far as the victim is concerned, that's exactly what happened.
Right.
They felt the immediate harm you were intending for them to feel. Mm-hmm. That's it. That kind of it. But by extension or result, that it is assault. Yes.
Because of how they're feeling.
Exactly.
Doesn't that open up a lot of like grey area, because you're now assigning a crime that is being born out of someone's feeling?
Well, it's actually born out of someone's intent. It wasn't.
But the intent is validated by someone's feeling that way, because they go, I'm going to get you, and they go that he knows where I live, he knows my family. Ooh, I feel in danger.
So the assault would happen without the person feeling it. So if I phoned you up and I said, I'm going to come and get you, and you said, Mr. Mugg doesn't know where I live, how's he going to come and get me? You contact the police, that's still assault. If you contact the police and say, this guy's threatened my life, that's assault.
So then now you've got to have assault on a scale, wouldn't you?
Yeah, of course.
Because you've got physical assault, but then you've got mental assault.
Yeah. No, there's definitely assault on a scale.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so you're
So this is-
you're leaning into the whole I feel offended and therefore your words are violence.
Well, and that's why I think, is it opening up a grey area? Because we have so many people who are getting offended on all sorts of matters, gender, gender being one. Like, I'm a woman. You don't recognise me as a woman. You're offending me.
So there's
Do you know what I mean?
I definitely do, and it's the problem here is trying to avoid harm, right? So, all right, we're slightly steering away from, hey, Mike, how are you? Who are you? Right? But
That's all right, I don't mind.
And I've gone round and round on this one a few times, right? If you're trying to avoid hurting people, that's one thing, right? I like that. I like the fact that you shouldn't be able to say things that hurt people with intent to hurt. To have a conversation, so the problems arise when you can't have a conversation for fear of a label being attributed to you. Right? Yeah. So you can't question immigration without somebody saying, oh, you're far right. You can't have a criticism of the way Muslims or some Muslims behave without being called an Islamophobe. You can't criticize Israel's foreign policy without being called anti-Semite. You can't criticize or question the trans movement without being called a transphobe. These it's problematic because you're silencing free speech. Yeah. You're stopping. The only people you're stopping are the reasonable people, right? The people that just want to have a normal conversation. When each of these groups are shouting them down or threatening them, this, that, and the other, people just withdraw. You're like, I just want a normal conversation. I want to share some ideas and maybe get some sort of an exchange and some middle ground. But if you're threatening my family and this, that, and the other, I'm going to withdraw. But then there's a void. And the people that fill that void are people that wouldn't mind having a bit of a scrap, right? They're a bit more angrier, a bit less to lose perhaps, or a bit more willing to risk what they have to lose.
Yeah, or they're getting triggered by something.
Right. So the trouble is that those are the people that now come and take the place of, or each of these groups.
Yeah.
Right. Who now want to have a conversation. So you now have people that want to talk about immigration. A much more aggressive version of that conversation is now in the front. Yeah. People that want to talk about, isn't Islam just fine? Thank you very much. Well, there's the people that now talking about it are much more louder, aggressive. The people that want to talk about the trans movement much more louder and much more, and it's just the people that want to talk about, the protection of the Jewish position, much more louder and much more aggressive. It's just everybody that's now in the speaking space are much more aggressive and much more threatening, right? And you're like, well, what about everybody else? Because everybody else is now feeling repressed, oppressed.
Yes.
Like I feel like I can't speak out about stuff. You're feeling about you can't. Everybody is their own version of a minority now, and you're like, well, this isn't really it. Right? I can't remember why we got on this topic. We were talking about...
We went from tort law to...
We're talking about assault and offence.
Well, and this is the art of law, right? So... but like you're saying, like just... My introduction to it was quite brutal. I thought, wow, if this is what it's all about. But, having a professional life and having to look at contracts regularly, for all sorts of things. I know Ryan talks about how the complexion of a contract can completely change by changing one word. And that's coming from you. But I can fully appreciate that. My view on it, though, is that there's only a very small part of a contract which is the true meat, the true spirit of what is trying to happen here. The rest is counterbalancing everything else out and to push risk out of the whole thing. Yeah. That's my very layman, blunt view on the whole thing. But I also appreciate that there is a lot of context and colour in law. It just gets shaded with this pages and pages and pages and pages of words. There's no pictures to look at.
Yeah. Well, I was saying this to Ryan the other day, but it's like a contract is a written down relationship, right? It's just a relationship. It's the building of a relationship, and the contract describes that building like a blueprint for a piece of architecture.
Yeah.
So once you read that contract, the first time you read it, let's face it, you ain't gonna understand it. I don't understand it the first time I started reading these things. But you read it again, you read it again, you read it again, and your mind starts to tune into the frequency of the language. By the time you've read it about 3 or 4 times, you start to see this building. Like in your mind's eye, you see this building before you, like this architecture.
Yeah, right.
Into like this, and you're like, okay, so I understand you're saying this, you want this to happen. But those stairs don't go where you say they're going to go.
Right, yes.
That window will never open. You've built 3 traps, 3 little mouse traps for my client, and he's always going to fall through them. And then you start to fix the stairs, and then you fix the window, then you remove those little traps that they've put in, right? And then by the time you're done, what you're looking at is a masterpiece, right? Because it's not passive reading. Like if you read a novel, it's quite passive reading. When you're reading contracts, it's really active. You're inside the words, right? And you, like what Ryan was saying, you change one word here on this contract. If you're dealing with
it then opens the door to then get to the next level.
If you're dealing with a complex transaction, you're dealing with multiple contracts. So you tweak it here, and then you have to follow that ripple down to another contract here, and then you follow the ripples across. And by the time you're done, you've got this thing in front of you, and you're like, it's wonderful. And then you give it to your client, and you're like, there you go. Right? And then your client's like, yeah, sound, I'll sign that. And you're like, poof, that's really beautiful, man. That's a really beautiful thing I just gave you. Right? But it's true of anything, though.
Yes.
It's only good if you fall in love with it. It's only good when you fall in love with it. If you actually, I wouldn't say obsess, but love it enough to play with it.
Yeah, but if you love something, you are automatically obsessed anyway.
To an extent, yeah. I think I like to think that I can separate like work. Like I'm a lot goofier at home, a lot more playful at home. Yeah. Like I switch it on when I come to work, and then I just disappear. Like, you know what? I remember when I first started the business, and I used to have an hour's drive from my last workplace home, and that hour drive was a real good decompression.
Yeah.
I'm now 10 minutes away from the house, right? So I came home once, and it was just, it was a good day. It was like I went from one thing to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing, and it's so much energy. Like I was one step away from stumbling to the car. I was just done, right? And I got home and I was just like, I was literally like that. And my wife's asking me like, "Baby, you okay?" And I'm like, "Babe, this is what a good day looks like. I've had a really good day, but I'm wiped out.
Yeah.
I'm done."
Yeah.
Because it really is active. It takes a lot of concentration, a lot of energy to be in that kind of frequency for that long.
That reminds. Yesterday I was listening to I was watching a video of the High Performance podcast. These guys that Jake Humphrey and his buddy, I can't remember his name. He's a doctor, and they had Simon Sinek on. You know Simon Sinek, and Jake was saying, what is your what? Can you help me find my why? And what he described was similar to what you were saying there about having a good, solid day and you're feeling drained at the end. And how Simon Sinek is helping people find their why. Why are you doing, Lou? Why do I do what I do? And I'm doing a lot of things at the moment, a lot of different diverse activities in business and life. But it's still, for me, it's like, why am I doing all these things? Like, really, why am I doing all these things? It's kind of like, why am I here? What's the meaning of life and sort of thing? But it's probably less grounded in this magical aura of, enlightenment to really a more grounded and closer to home feeling of fulfillment. So Jake was like, he asked him, he said, what's the best professional memory that you've ever had? The happiest that you've ever been? And I'm kind of deducing that you had that at that end of that day. You had a really great day, invigorating day. And then what was the most what was the greatest memory that you had as a child? And Jake, he linked his professional memory. He used to be the lead presenter for BBC Formula One when he was 28 years old. He came from children's TV to being a lead presenter, but he had David Coulthard as his co-host and Eddie Jordan. So oldish school Formula One heavyweights as his wingman on this BBC, on the premier Formula One show for the country at the time. And then as a child, he said he had to drill into it a bit more, but he said my overriding memory is driving with my brother and sister and in the back, and mum and dad in the front, and they were hardworking. One charity worker, I think a nurse or something, but that was his memory. The overwhelming feeling of happiness, just being within the family. And so Simon was like, "Well, you like being with people and doing things. It's not necessarily the activity; it's being around people, either of a patriarchal or matriarchal figure, mum and dad, and in work life, having Eddie Jordan and David Coulthard kind of patriarchal figures as well." Mm-hmm. And you've linked them together. Now, who knows why we think of these things? When you're asked a question, these kind of thoughts bubble up. But Simon was saying your why, even though they're very different activities, one being a young child with a family, and two, 28 years old presenting Formula One in the pit lane of a Formula One race, very different. But he drew the similarities together to why. And Jake was like, I'd have it here with the production team. He liked working with people. And I was listening to that and I was like, that I kind of feel the same sort of thing. So people go on these searches for why am I here, why am I doing these things, but it's actually could be and probably is a lot closer to home. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm a bit the same way as well. Like I like working with people, and I grew up in an area in Brisbane in Australia. We lived in a cul-de-sac, and there were 14 kids, all around 2 or 3 years of age in our street. There was only like how many streets? There was like 7 houses in our street, but there were so many kids. You get home from school, and it's like, what's going on today? And that was for years. And so I really enjoyed that. I really just, saddling up on a Friday night and going out and causing a bit of mayhem in the streets. As a 14-year-old, 15-year-old kid. That was the days when parents would just like shut the door, don't want to know what's going on. My mum calls it benign neglect. Raising kids back then in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
But it was an interesting conversation, I thought. It's like you don't need to go searching too far for why we're doing these things. Like you had a great day in the firm, and one of the greatest days I've ever had as in my professional life was going down to a proving ground, an automotive proving ground in Italy, place called Nardo, and it's a private vehicle testing facility where they've got a huge circular track. It's about 14 kilometres, and they've got handling circuits and everything. And I went in there for 3 days with probably the greatest test driver that's ever lived, an Italian guy called Loris Bacocchi. And he started a school to help people, to teach people how to become test drivers. And he's of high performance cars. And he's pretty much developed most of the top cars that's been produced in the last 30 years, all the Bugattis, Porsches, Lotus, a lot of the Lotus cars, some lesser known cars like an Apollo.
What were you doing there, bro?
I was learning from him how to become a test driver. So my core passion and love always has been from the moment I can remember life, has been cars. It's always been about cars. So if someone said to me, cars are off the table anymore, I honestly would not know what to do myself.
So what do you do, Mike?
So I've always been, cars have always guided my life in terms of my decision making, my professional life. I studied car design in Italy for 6 months, did industrial design at university. I've worked in automotive manufacturing in Australia and North America, California and Detroit, and have been working with car companies ever since in the UK. But I'm also doing property development with Ryan. I'm starting a nursery with my nanny. It's and then 7 studios as well. So, but then this is the other part of me is I have a joy and a passion of cars, and I can always find solace just by opening up Instagram, reading a magazine, and reading about cars because there's so much material on them, and it's kind of like a meditative thing for me. I can read a report or a review about an Aston Martin DBS, whatever, and because I just have a natural interest in all of it, and I can just forget the world for a few minutes, and it's a lovely thing to have because I'm not constantly caught up in, whatever else. I can just have a little release by reading something of a thing that I enjoy. But then the other part of me is I'm an entrepreneur. And so I have this desire to try businesses, and I'm always thinking about how a business works, how can it be improved. And like going back to early days, I played trumpet for a while. And I went up to my granddad, my grandpop, and I said, "Grandma, can I play a song for you?" And he said, "Yeah, sure." And so I played him a song on the trumpet. And he said, "Michael, you're going to be an entrepreneur one day." And I was like, "Oh, that's cool. Like, is that a trumpet player?" And I honestly thought a trumpet player was called entrepreneur because that's how he linked it. I had never even heard the name before, the word before. And it was only years later until I was like, what's he saying? Like, he doesn't mean that. He meant, and I don't even know how he came to that train of thought.
Even now?
No, I don't really know. I mean, because I said to him, "I just want to play you a song." And that's what his response was. It might have been in my delivery. I honestly don't know. But it's always been a part of. It's always been how I think, and then it's helped me start my own businesses within the automotive world as well. So, and then with all of this going on, I want to start my own podcast with people in the automotive world and talk to them about why they're doing what they're doing. Because if in the automotive world, people are rarely there because of job function. They're not there because they've just fell into it. Mm-hmm. They're there because they like that world. It's a very cliquey world. It's a very male-dominated world as well, probably to its detriment. But people are there because they love cars. You talk to anyone else in the car industry and it's, you can talk business, but then it's very easy to slip into, well, what else is going on? Because there's so much going on, right? That you can form bonds very quickly. And you probably have the same way in the law field. Like it's very easy to form bonds with other people in the industry because you're all experiencing it together.
You say that. Have you ever met other lawyers?
Yeah, I have.
They're a weird crew, man. They're a weird crew to be around. Like, there's a handful of them that I like spending time with, and like 3.
Really?
Oh man, I don't know why. I don't know why. When I'm in a room.
But is that because everyone's so different, or is it everyone has a very specific view of the world? Do you know what I mean?
No, is it that? I don't know. I don't know. It's not nice to talk badly about people, but when I'm in a room full of too many lawyers, I just like, shoot me. What am I doing here? What am I doing in this room? I don't know what it is. I don't know. They just don't seem chilled. There
really?
seems to be yeah. There's- I have conversations with lawyers where I'm actually having to write to them like, how about our clients can carry on hating each other and you and I can treat each other like gentlemen?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm having to write that to a
Yeah,
grown man.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you're like, come on, man.
Yeah, but is that because the work is generally adversarial?
Yeah. But that doesn't mean. So here's the thing. Like, even if it has to be a fight, don't you have the courage to just talk to me as a man?
Yeah,
Right, okay, we're going to bash each other up. Fine, no problem. We can still talk as men. You don't have to shout and swear. We're going to fight anyway.
yeah.
It's not going to make a difference whether you shout and swear. Say what you want to say.
But then, is your counterpart generally probably a bit more invested into the emotion of it?
I think, this is just a theory,
Okay.
but I think it's just a numbers game. You bully who you can bully until you get a wall. And when the wall turns up, you try a different tactic because the bullying thing doesn't work anymore. I think that's what happens. I don't think I think it's a cheap and easy tactic. It's the quickest way to an end because you can get through, you can filter out. It's not particularly polite, it's not particularly well mannered, it's not particularly elegant, but you can filter out a lot of stuff just by just being really bullish. And then when someone stops and says, what are you talking about? You don't know what you're talking about. Just calm down. Act like a man. Or I'm going to open this door and then you're going to start crying.
Act like
and it's
a
not going to
man.
go good. Right? And then, but do you know what? We had this recently. We had this where I was writing to this chap saying, look, can you please? It was an oil company. It was a little bit of an argy-bargy. Right? And the two fellas fell out. And I was like, look, who cares how they feel? Unless you don't have to be rude, do you? You don't have to make it personal. Let's just talk to each other like gentlemen. We're negotiating a deal here. If I was a lesser man, I would take this personally and I'd be obstructive. It can't help you to be this rude. Wouldn't stop. Really aggressive. Really, much older than me. Tons of experience, litigator. Really aggressive. James, would you please? My guy comes out. Whoosh.
Really? Really?
Bro, it's so good not to fight your own battles.
Yeah.
So my guy comes out, hits him over the head with his little bat, goes back into his cupboard, and then he won't talk to me anymore. Refuses to deal with us, refuses to answer my calls, won't reply to my emails, puts another lawyer in front of the deal. All right. And then we do the deal for nice.
You can't help it. You can't help people, can you? So what makes James tick? Like, why is he so effective?
He's just got a brilliant brain.
But he enjoys the chase as well. Like, there has to be an element of that, right?
I never asked him. The thing is,
Do you know what I mean by chase? Like,
yeah, I think, but it's different. It seems different because it's like a lion and a little budgerigar. The lion's there looking at you like, do you enjoy the hunt? And you're like, what? This isn't hunting.
no, right.
This isn't hunting yet. Right. So I've never really tested him. He's never been tested. Yeah. Right. Because he's just sitting there just looking at this budgie and this budgie's looking at this lion going, oh no, what have I got myself into? And then he's just like, yeah. Really? And that's it. Dude, you've got to see the guy in action. You've got to see him. Ask Ryan. See him in action. He's just phenomenal.
So I kind of, is it like going fishing for marlin or big tuna? Big yellowfin fighting tuna.
Well,
you go, right, like, let's saddle up, let's go look for some stuff. Do you know what I mean? Is that how it works?
No, not in corporate, not in the business world. In the business world, fighting is very expensive.
No, but you want it, like, to maximize his value.
That's an interesting thing to say.
Because otherwise, what's he going to do? He's going to get bored, isn't he? Or is he going to go, oh, I want to sink my teeth into something?
The thing is, the reality is that there's so much genuinely going wrong, right? With, people having, like, large companies trying to rip off a consumer, this and that happening. There's so many actual injustices happening. He's got plenty to sink his teeth into, right? Yeah. There's plenty out there. But in the business to business world, if you're fighting, it's really bad business, really unnecessary and expensive.
Yeah.
You just don't do it. No. You know, I mean, even when you're in the right, if the numbers don't stack up, you don't throw away money just to recover what 30, 50, 100 grand. You're like, it's not worth it. It's not worth my time.
No.
You know, but sometimes it is, and sometimes there's a message, and these are the ones that are dangerous. When the client comes to you and says, "I don't care about the numbers. I have to send a message,
Right.
because I'm known,
Right.
and there are sharks swimming around my pool,
Yeah.
so I have to send a message, and I don't really care how much it costs. I'm not interested. Win or lose, crush this person. I just want them. I want them to be dragged through the ringer just for a while. You're like, oh, okay, fellas, go, right? And then they just drag people through the ringer in a very public and horrible way, and then everybody else, all the other sharks swim away. They're like, this is not for us. This is not for us. We thought that was easy pickings, but that's not easy pickings, because you think about it like this, right? You're a big business. You've got a lot going on. I come to you and I bother you, and it's £20,000. What is what we're talking about? And you're like, what? It's going to cost more than that to get a lawyer involved. Go away. Just get it gone. Get it away from me, right? But so that particular type of parasite does it again and again.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
other parasites, either within the business, if it's an employment matter,
Yep.
or outside of the business, they think that, okay, that's easy pickings. We can do this because it's too big to notice. It's too big to notice these little bites. And then every now and again, it's like,
Yeah. So it's the cost of deterrence.
yeah, it's exactly that.
Yeah.
It's exactly that. Yeah.
I get these emails I think they're called internal tech emails, and they're emails that have been, I don't know how you say it, subpoenaed or evidence in technology cases. Generally, they're Silicon Valley based. So it's Mark Zuckerberg sent Steve Jobs an email in 2009, and it said all this, and because it always had these communications had to be submitted for evidence in a case between Facebook and Apple or whatever, and you can see how some of the thinking behind these very, very, very prominent people and how they communicate internally. Probably thinking this thing will never see the light of day, but no, 15 years later, something's happened and that all of the evidence has been lifted out. And I remember there was one of Google when they were assessing the value of YouTube, and it was one of the Sergey Brin or whoever. They said they want 50 million for YouTube, and then Sergey's like, well, 50 million doesn't sound crazy. Like that was his email. Doesn't sound crazy. Like pretty much go and do it. And then look at YouTube now. They're a 10 billion a year company. I can see how through the law system, through the court of law, things come about which you can then see people who are involved in it, the founders of Google, and how they think, particularly at that time.
I mean, that's a real privilege. That's one of the great privileges about this job is your access pass to the inside of these crazy worlds. Like, especially as you go up the food chain, like things are quite serious. This at the bottom of the food chain, because it's like, it's bread and butter. But we deal with oil companies, man. These guys are a different breed. They're a different breed. They'll turn up to a meeting. The other side's got like 20 lawyers. And the actual players involved, they'll turn up in jeans, T-shirt. They just work like proper hard working guys, and they'll just turn up, and they've got all these rigs all over the world, this, that, and the other, and they're just talking to each other like as a real. To be honest, they're like cowboys. It's like you watch these cowboy movies. They're like cowboys, and they talk to each other just like that. They're really tough. It's really they're really strong, really friendly. It looks like all emotions out there, and then they're like, okay, we got a deal, bang, done. And then, you're like, and then you're having private conversations, and he's like, look, I want this moved here, move it to Canada. Canada's got a much better well testing, this, that, and the other. He goes, look, I'm done. Because my business partner's been in Russia, has been shot out in his hotel, and you're like, this isn't a movie, is it? This is your life. Like, they live this. They make movies about these guys.
Yeah.
And they're just normal people that have just, through the sheer tyranny of will, have just bent the world to their, this is what I want. It's fantastic. Really fantastic stuff.
Well, we should carry on this conversation another time.
It's been a pleasure.
I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's been really good, my man.
Thank you.